Welcome everybody to the Maya course. In this session we're going to talk about how to build a low poly building. Click new. Here on the interface we're going to start working with polygons, so you can go into the poly modeling shelf. We can create objects from selecting them here, or we can go into the create poly primitives and we can select them here. You would see the same icon. That's because those are two ways of doing the same exact thing. Let's start by creating a cube. We're going to select here the scale tool, and then we're going to click and drag the cubes in the corners. Then we're going to switch to the move tool, and we're going to move this slightly higher, holding down Alt and left mouse button allows you to orbit around your scene. Holding down Alt and right mouse button allows you to zoom in or out, and holding down Alt and click and dragging middle mouse button allows you to pan. To create this low poly building, we are going to be accessing the submenu. To access the polygon submenu, right click and hold on top of the object and go into faces. Select the top face, grab your scale tool, and from the middle click and drag slightly. Click away. You would see that if we just hover with our mouse to the object, we still have access to the faces. Click and drag at the bottom. We'll make that slightly bigger. Right click, hold, and go into object mode. Now we're going to duplicate this object. For that, we can go into edit, duplicate, or keyboard shortcut Control D, and we're going to move that slightly, just like so. And now we're going to go back to right click, face mode, and using our move tool we're going to click and drag down. We can even move it out slightly, just like so. Adjust it accordingly, then get out of the faces by clicking on the object mode. Again, that is right click, hold, object mode. Up next, we're going to create a box for the windows, and for that we're going to use the same box. Go ahead and duplicate, Control D, grab the move tool, bring it outwards, scale that down, push it inwards. Here's a good size, and as you can see here, there's a little gap there. And in this perspective view, you can see it down here, perspective. Might be a little bit hard for us to line it up correctly. So we can go now here to the panel layout, or if you are hovering over your workspace, press the space bar, and now you get access to the side view, front, and top view. You would see that my side view and front view are inversed. Let's fix that by selecting all the objects in an empty area. Click and drag. This is called a selection. So again, clicking and dragging, it's going to select it all, and now we can rotate accordingly. Now you would see that each object is going to be rotating on its own axis, and therefore kind of like resetting the work that we've already done. Let's not do that. Instead, we're going to create a group off of this. When we have all these objects selected, let's go into edit, group, or Control G. Once we create a group, you would see how the center is going to be automatically offset. We can fix this by going into modify center pivot. This will make my center right in front of my object. Now I'm going to grab this yellow ring click and drag it, and you would see how all my objects will move together as a unit. Also, as I rotate, you will see that my channel box values will change. We can be more precise by inputting the value, in this case 90 degrees. Now we've successfully changed the side view to the actual side and my front view to the actual front. Whenever I would like to expand or make full screen any particular view, I just hover over the one I want and then hit my spacebar. If you press 4 on your keyboard, you will gain access to the wireframe. Scrolling in with my middle mouse button, I can now select my object, rotate it slightly, and push it back, being more precise with its position. Spacebar to zoom out, spacebar to zoom in. At this point, I'm now gonna right click on top of the window, select faces, and I'm gonna select this top face. Now we're going to learn how to extrude. Extruding is a function vital to anybody doing 3D modeling, where we now get to add additional polygons to our geometric shapes. We can do this by going into our modeling menu set, edit mesh, extrude, or Control E. Once we apply that function, we would see that we'll get options to change our pivot, rotate, scale, and move all at once. We're gonna click here to offset our extrusion. Now I'm gonna click on this box, push that inwards, and click on the top box and push it inwards as well. Adjust it as needed. And now you can extrude one more time. So edit mesh, extrude, and using the blue arrow, I'm gonna push that in. I don't want to push it in too much where the polygons from behind starts to overlap, but we want to push it enough so that we get a little bit of room. We will now add 2 additional cubes to create the window frame. Click on the polygon cube. Changing multiple views, bring that to fit the frame we created. And move it into place. That looks about right. Let's go ahead now and duplicate this object. Control D and move it horizontally. Lastly, let's scale it down. Just like so, we've created our first window. I will now select the following 3 objects: the frame, Shift, select the vertical frame, and while holding Shift, also select the horizontal frame. And now we're going to group all this together. Edit, Group, or Control G, and you would see Group 2, the second time we group something together. So if you click here in the channel box, we can now label it Window. In order for us to be able to reselect the entire group, make sure to have your outliner in the viewport. You can always bring your outliner, if you don't have it, by going into Windows, Outliner. This will bring it there, and now you'll be able to select your window group. Let's make some duplicates of this window group. Control D, modify, center pivot, move slightly to the right. Now, grab the first group, Shift select the second group, Control D, and move it slightly down. I'll do that one more time. We can now place windows all around our building. Let's grab the first set of windows towards the bottom. Modify, center pivot. And now we can move it slightly inwards so that it is as close as possible to our building. Let's adjust second row. Now let's go into the top view. Selecting the first two windows and going into the top view. I'm gonna press 4, and I'm also gonna press the letter D. I'm gonna select the first two row of windows, and we're gonna group them together. Let's call it window top for top row. Let's call it window top row. And those two being a group together, we're gonna press the letter D, and we're gonna move the pivot to the center of our building. Now we're gonna hit the letter D again, grab our rotation tool. We're now gonna duplicate that group, and with our rotation tool selected, we're gonna click and drag, and let's Control D, duplicate that group, and click and drag one more time. We can even do this one more time. Control D and click and drag. Okay, so we successfully duplicated all our top row for the building. Now let's adjust it. Remember to modify center pivot for each group. Now we can keep duplicating up until we fill our building with windows. Remember, this is going to be a matter of duplicating and then moving into place. Don't forget that each time you move a group, you must rename it accordingly. Remember, you can always use multiple views to align your objects as best as possible. Use your grid to guide yourself. And remember to select your objects accordingly. If you selected an object that you don't want by mistake, hold down Control and deselect it. Don't forget to rename each one of your groups. Great. Up next, we're going to learn about a tool called the Edge Looping tool. You will find the Edge Loop tool by going into Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. Click on the option box. Over here, you're going to be able to change some options, such as maintaining the relative distance from edge, equal distance, or create multiple edge loops. We're going to go ahead and keep things as they are. This is the default settings. We're going to select our top building here, and we're going to click and drag and then let go, and this will create an edge loop. As we now learn more about modeling, creating an edge loop is going to be a very useful tool to add additional geometry to our objects. We will now right click, hold, and go into the face mode, and we're going to click all the faces around our newly created edge tool. Select multiple faces by holding shift. Also, if you double click, it will select all the faces, or if you select a face, hold down shift and then double click, you will have successfully selected the entire edge loop at once. Now let's go ahead and extrude this edge. We're going to do so by going into Edit Mesh, Extrude, or Control E. Click here to have this extrusion affect the entire edge loop at once. Click one time in this cube, and then we're going to go to the middle cube right over here. Click and drag. We can even move this upward slightly, just like so. Click away when done. Let's now go into object mode, select our smaller building, and let's now create an edge similar to the one we did here up top. Unfortunately, we will not be able to use the edge loop tool here, because one of the main differences is that here it goes all the way around, but over here we can't do that, as we have this area here interfering with our edge. We're now going to be using a different tool to create additional polygons. This one is going to be called the multi-cut tool. To access the multi-cut tool, you're going to go into Mesh Tools, Multi-Cut. We're going to select that. Notice that this tool is the same one as here, same icon as the one over here. We can also just click here. Let's go into our side view, create a cut. We're going to click, let go, and then click on the other side and let go. Let's go into our front view. If you press 4, you'll be able to see where that edge is. And if you click and drag without letting it hold, it allows you to offset it. So we're going to make this as straight as possible, just like so. And click enter. We still have one more edge to do. So we're going to click. And then let go. Press enter when done. Now we're going to go into our faces. Shift select each one of these faces. Control E to extrude. Let's click here to centralize it. Let's just select the middle box. First click here, and now you get access to that middle cube. And now we're going to click and drag slightly, just like so. We can move that up slightly as well if we want to. We can now place some windows in this area if we want, the same way we did up here. Let's now create an opening for the garage using our multi-cut tool. Let's go to the front view, and we're going to make a series of cuts. Let's start here to here to here, and lastly we go back to our edge. Once we're happy, we're going to click enter. We are now gonna right click hold, select the face, back to your selection tool, click, and now let's make a nice frame. Extrude by selecting top box, get access to the middle box, and extrude inwards. We are gonna move this down just like so, right click, and now we're gonna select the edge. Now with the edge selected, I can move this up slightly so that it creates a nice even frame. I'm gonna select my edges just like so, and I'm gonna extrude them outwards slightly. Next step, select the face of the garage opening and let's detach that face. So select it, edit mesh, detach. This now should allow you to just click and drag that face out. Now we're going to create the grooves for the garage door. A very simple way of doing this is by going back and selecting the edge loop tool. Let's go into mesh tools, insert edge loop option box. This time around we're going to select multiple edge loops. I'm going to go with a number of 24. I'm going to now click and hold my garage opening and let go. Grab your selection tool, and we're going to select every other edge and just go down the line. Grab your move tool and push those in, just like so. I will now grab all those faces and push them back in. With those faces selected, go to mesh display harden edge. Click one time, and now just click away. You can now go to object mode and see your results. We will now create simple awnings to our windows. We're going to create them off of a polygon cube. Go ahead, create your polygon cube, pin it against a window using your scale tool. Start moving your shape up until you have something that looks like this. Click 4 on your keyboard to access your wireframe. Right click, and let's select the face that is against the building. Click the number 5 to return to your shaded view. I'm gonna move that slightly up, just like that. The edge, this top edge, move it up higher, and this bottom edge, move it down. Go to the object mode and scale it accordingly. Looking pretty good. Let's make some divisions here for our awnings. Let's go now into mesh tools, insert edge loop tool option box, and let's just add 6 edge loops. Click and drag in your awning. Let's now select this front edge, Control E to extrude. This time around, we're gonna click on keep faces together and switch that off. We're gonna move using that blue arrow, and using this red cube, we're gonna push that inwards. Now grab the green arrow, push it down and inwards. Keep adjusting up until you're happy with it. With your awning selected, go ahead and relabel. Let's go ahead and call that awning. Once completed, let's duplicate it around and place it on each window. Let's go ahead now and create some planters. We're going to do this by creating another polycube. Bring it to front. Go to the faces. Taper that face. Select the top face. Control E to extrude. And grabbing the cubes, I'm going to extrude inwards. And now I'm going to Control E one more time and push that face down. Let's grab this edge from this corner and just push it outwards like that. And go to object mode and rename planter. Using the same process as before, we are going to locate this object right below our window. Just like I did before, I'm going to duplicate, press D to change the pivot, press D again to set it, and start moving it into place. For our next step, we're going to create a door. For the door, I hide our objects. We're going to select them all, go into my layers panel, and we can click here to create a new layer. Then we're going to right click, hold, add selected objects. This V stands for visibility. If I click it on and off, the visibility of my object will be toggled as such. Let's bring yet another polycube and let's create the door. And just by clicking and dragging, you will create a door. Right click, select the edge faces, deselect the one below, Control E, grab the middle cube, click and drag, move it slightly upwards so that it's flat at the bottom, and adjust it accordingly. Grab the top, push it down slightly. I will now select these three edges and extrude them outwards as to create a frame. I will now create the doorknob, and by bringing another polycube, we want to make sure it looks flat somewhere along these lines. Bring a polygon sphere, and before we put it in place, you would see that this sphere does have a very high poly count. So if we go here to the inputs, we can change the subdivision axis as well as the subdivision heights. Let's take the subdivision axis, change it to 6, and the subdivision height, change it to 6 as well. Click enter when done, and while in object mode, let's rotate it 90 degrees on X, and with that object selected, we can make it look smooth by pressing the number 3. This can be applied to any polygon object. It's not that the object is changing, yet think of it as different ways in which we can view the polygons. Not all polygons need to be smoothed. This one in particular, we're going to keep it smooth. We're going to move it into place, scale it accordingly. Let's group both of these objects together. Center pivot, rename it doorknob, put it in place. Select all the objects, group them together, and rename it door. Toggle the visibility of your layer back on and add the door to the building. Things like doors and windows are important because they give us a sense of scale, how big or how small are going to be the characters interacting with this environment. So just take that into the consideration. Why don't we now create some steps so that we can access our building? It's going to be yet again our reliable cube. Just like so. I will now select the face, extrude it. Let's extrude this outwards, grabbing the top edge. Let's bring this down. Actually, well, let's go back to object mode. We actually don't need any of these. Just gonna grab the face and extrude it. Just like so. Go back to object mode. And now just duplicate this object. Lastly, let's now do the steps. And let's duplicate that. Grab the front face, move it forward. Duplicate that, and here we go. Very nice. We're almost finished. We're now going to create another cube, and we're going to add now some fine details to our scene. We're going to add that there. I'm going to duplicate this and bring it all the way up. I'm going to adjust this real quick. Right clicking and grabbing the vertices. The vertices allow me to actually move points within my geometry. This shape will now allow me to provide more visual elements to my building edge. just like so. All right. Now, as you can see, that does add one more level of just dynamicness to our concept here. One more detail that we can add to this will be to add some air vents to the actual rooftop. We can also add some pipes using cylinders. And here you have it, folks. Your first 3D model of a building. I can keep adding some more details to it if I want to. But if you reach this point, you're understanding the basics of 3D modeling. What I would like you to do is to continue adding on to this model so that it looks complete. Now that you know how to model, why don't you try a street lamp, a front lawn or yard, as well as a mailbox. Alright guys, as you now finish, don't forget to save. Go to File, Save As. It's very important that as you save, you have multiple versions available to you in case a file gets corrupted or something happens. So go File, Save As, and save it